"Mom!" My youngest son, David's voice cracked through the phone, barely above a whisper. "Impossible. She's in my hospital. Not at home." I froze at the kitchen sink, my eyes fixed on my daughter-in-law Lisa in the garden outside. She was watering the roses, humming softly, completely unaware I was watching her. "Why? What's wrong?" I asked, instinctively lowering my voice. "I'm at Mount Sinai Hospital." "There's a woman in the ICU who looks exactly like Lisa. She was brought in unconscious yesterday, but she keeps mumbling about being held somewhere for months." My grip tightened on the phone. "What do you mean, held somewhere?" "Mom." His voice dropped even lower. "This woman has a small scar on her wrist that looks old, like from childhood. But Lisa at home has never had a scar there." I stared at Lisa through the window. She was still humming, still moving among the flowers with that familiar grace. But now, something felt different. Wrong. Over these past 6 months since Michael's funeral, I'd grown to love Lisa like my own daughter. But had there been signs I'd missed? Small things that didn't quite fit? The memory hit me suddenly. Last week, when I'd mentioned Michael's favorite childhood book, Lisa had given me a blank stare before quickly covering it with a smile. At the time, I'd attributed it to grief-induced memory fog. Now, that moment took on a sinister new meaning. "Mom, I think we need to talk about who's really living in our house." The line went dead. I set the phone down with trembling fingers and watched Lisa straighten up, brushing dirt from her hands. When she turned toward the house, I quickly busied myself at the counter, my heart hammering against my ribs. The rational part of my mind tried to dismiss David's call as a mistake, a coincidence. But the maternal instinct that had kept my children safe for decades was screaming that something was terribly wrong. The back door opened with its familiar creak. "Who was that on the phone?" Lisa asked, her voice carrying that gentle curiosity I'd grown to love over the past 6 months. But now I noticed something else, a slight tension beneath the sweetness, as if she was monitoring my reaction. "Wrong number," I lied, not looking up from the imaginary task of arranging already perfect salt and pepper shakers. Lisa moved to the sink, washing her hands with careful precision. I watched from the corner of my eye as she dried them on the blue towel, the same movement she made every morning. But something nagged at me, a detail that felt off, like a picture hanging slightly crooked, the way she held the towel. Lisa always folded it twice before hanging it back on the rack, a small habit that had charmed me when I first noticed it. But today, she simply draped it over the bar, leaving it slightly askew. My chest tightened as I realized I'd been unconsciously cataloging these tiny inconsistencies for weeks without understanding their significance. "I'll make us some tea," she said, reaching for the kettle. As she moved around the kitchen, I found myself studying her with new eyes. The way she held her shoulders, the rhythm of her steps, the unconscious way she touched her left wrist when she was thinking. All of it suddenly felt like a performance I was seeing for the first time. How had I missed the theatrical quality of her grief? The way her tears always seemed perfectly timed, never too much, never too little. She opened the cabinet where we kept the tea, and I noticed another small difference. Lisa always reached for the Earl Grey first. It was her favorite, and she'd drink it religiously every morning. But her hand hesitated for just a moment before selecting the familiar blue box, as if she'd forgotten which one to choose. My mind raced back through 6 months of shared moments, each memory now tainted with suspicion. The way she'd sometimes pause before answering questions about Michael, as if accessing carefully rehearsed information. How she'd once asked me to repeat a story about Michael's childhood that I'd already told her twice before. The strange moment when she'd called our neighbor Mrs. Peterson by the wrong name, despite having met her multiple times. "You seem tense, Mom. Is everything okay?" I looked up to find her watching me with those dark eyes that had always reminded me of deep water. But now, there was something else there. Something calculating, predatory, as if she was studying my reactions the same way I was studying hers. For a brief moment, her mask seemed to slip, and I saw something cold and foreign looking back at me. "Just tired," I managed, forcing my voice to remain steady while my mind screamed warnings. She smiled. That perfect, loving smile that had comforted me through 6 months of grief. But now I could see the careful construction of it, the way it never quite reached her eyes. "Why don't you sit down? I'll take care of everything." The tea ritual was something Lisa and I had developed over these past 6 months. During our daily conversations, I'd learned exactly how she liked her tea, and she'd learned my preferences. 1 sugar cube, a splash of milk, steeped for exactly 3 minutes. But as I watched her prepare it today, I noticed she added the milk before the tea had finished steeping. A small thing, but different from her usual careful routine. And thinking back over these past 6 months, there had been other small inconsistencies. The way she sometimes forgot which cabinet held the tea, how she'd occasionally call me Helena instead of Mom, like she usually did. The time I caught her staring at family photos as if she was studying them, memorizing details. How she'd claimed to be allergic to shellfish when I'd made paella, despite Michael having told me countless times that Lisa loved seafood. The pieces of a horrible puzzle were falling into place, and the picture they formed made my blood run cold. "Here you go," she said, setting the cup in front of me with the same gentle care she always showed. I took a sip and tasted the difference immediately. Too weak, too cool, not quite right. But I smiled and thanked her anyway, because what else could I do? If my suspicions were correct, I was sitting across from a stranger who had been living in my house, eating at my table, sleeping in my guest room for half a year. The thought made my skin crawl. As she moved around the kitchen, I discreetly glanced at her left wrist. The sleeve of her dress covered it completely, but something nagged at me. Over these past 6 months, I'd grown so close to Lisa, yet I'd never noticed whether she had any scars. Had I simply never paid attention, or was there something I'd missed? I thought about the real Lisa, the woman Michael had brought home for dinner just days before the accident. She'd been nervous, eager to please, genuinely excited about becoming part of our family. She'd asked thoughtful questions about Michael's childhood, laughed at his embarrassing stories, and had a way of looking at him that made it clear she was completely, utterly in love. The woman sitting across from me now had that same face, the same voice, the same mannerisms, but the light in her eyes when she spoke about Michael was different, possessive rather than loving, desperate rather than content. "I need to run to the grocery store," Lisa announced after we'd finished our tea in uncomfortable silence. "We're out of milk and I want to make that soup you love for dinner." I nodded, not trusting my voice. As she gathered her purse and keys, I made a decision that would change everything. "Actually, I think I'll come with you," I said suddenly. Lisa paused, her hand on the door handle. For just a moment, something flickered across her face. Surprise? Annoyance? Fear? "Oh, that's not necessary, Mom. I'll be quick." "I need some fresh air anyway," I insisted, reaching for my jacket. "Really, I'd prefer to go alone." "I have a few other errands to run." There was something in her tone that made me even more determined. "I don't mind waiting in the car." Lisa's smile looked forced, and I could see the calculation behind her eyes as she tried to find a way to refuse without seeming suspicious. "You know what? I just remembered I left my shopping list upstairs. Why don't you start the car and I'll be right down?" I watched her hurry up the stairs, then quietly slipped out the front door and around to the side of the house where I could see the driveway. Within minutes, Lisa came back down and got into her car. But instead of waiting for me, she pulled out of the driveway and drove away. My heart pounding, I got into my own car and followed her at a distance. Lisa drove through the city streets with purpose, clearly not heading toward any grocery store. I stayed far enough behind to avoid detection, my hands gripping the steering wheel as we moved deeper into an industrial area I'd never seen before. She finally stopped at a run-down warehouse district, parking beside an abandoned building that looked like it hadn't been used in years. I pulled over several blocks away and watched as she got out of her car and walked toward a side entrance, pulling out a key. My blood ran cold. Why would Lisa have a key to this place? I waited until she disappeared inside, then crept closer on foot. The building was old with boarded windows and graffiti-covered walls. Through a crack in one of the boards, I could see a faint light flickering inside. Lisa? I heard her voice calling from within. Lisa, where are you? But there was something wrong with her tone. It wasn't concern, it was anger. I know you're here somewhere. You can't have gotten far. I pressed my ear closer to the crack and heard footsteps moving around inside, then the sound of doors being opened and slammed shut. Damn it, she shouted, and the fury in her voice made me step back involuntarily. After what felt like an eternity, I heard her footsteps approaching the door. I quickly hid behind a dumpster as she emerged, her face twisted with rage. She got out, she muttered to herself as she got back into her car. How the hell did she get out? I watched her drive away, then waited another 10 minutes before approaching the building. The side door she'd used was still unlocked. Inside, I found what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse. But as my eyes adjusted to the dim light filtering through boarded windows, I began to make out details that made my blood run cold. There were signs of recent habitation: food containers, water bottles, a battery-powered lantern. But it was the smell that hit me first. The stench of fear, of human confinement, of something terrible that had happened in this place. I moved deeper into the building, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. In the back corner, I found a partitioned area that had been converted into something that resembled a makeshift living space. But the heavy chains bolted to the wall told a different story. My hands shook as I approached the area. A narrow cot with stained blankets, a bucket in the corner, and scattered around the floor were personal items that made my heart stop. Strands of dark hair, pieces of torn clothing, a broken bracelet that looked familiar. But it was what I found hidden behind a loose board in the wall that made my legs give out completely. A cardboard box, carefully sealed and hidden. Inside were dozens of photographs, and as I looked through them with trembling hands, I saw Lisa, the real Lisa, in various states of distress, chained, unconscious, clearly suffering, and in several of the photos, standing over her with an expression of cold satisfaction, was the woman I'd been calling my daughter-in-law for 6 months. Underneath the photographs was a journal, written in handwriting I recognized. The first page revealed a truth that made my blood run cold. My name is Emma Blake. Lisa is my twin sister, separated at birth. This is the record of how I will take her place and claim the life that should have been mine. Day 157. She's finally broken enough to be useful. The more she tells me about Michael's family, the more I realize how perfect this setup will be. Helena Morrison is exactly the kind of lonely, grieving mother who will cling to any connection to her dead son. All I have to do is be the perfect girlfriend, the grateful survivor, and she'll love me like the daughter she never had. Day 173. Had to punish her again today for trying to escape, but she gave me another useful detail about Michael's childhood. The way he used to leave little notes for his mother, how he always called her Mom instead of Mother. These small things will make all the difference in convincing his family that I belong with them. Day 198. Michael is getting suspicious about my behavior. He asked me yesterday why I seemed different, why I'd stopped wearing the perfume he bought me for our anniversary. I told him I was still traumatized from the accident, but I could see doubt growing in his eyes. I need to be more careful, or everything I've worked for will be ruined. I sat in that terrible place, reading entry after entry, each one revealing the depth of this woman's calculated cruelty. The early entries detailed her obsession with Michael and her plan to replace Lisa. One entry, dated just days before Michael's death, revealed her original plan. Tomorrow I'll tamper with Lisa's car brakes, just enough to cause a minor accident when she's driving alone to work. Nothing serious, just enough to put her in the hospital for a few weeks. While she's recovering, I'll volunteer to help take care of her, and Michael will see how devoted and caring I am. During this time, I'll have countless opportunities to show him that I'm better for him than she ever was. By the time Lisa recovers, Michael will already be mine. But Emma's plan had gone catastrophically wrong. The entry that followed, written in shaky handwriting, revealed her horror. Everything went wrong. Michael surprised Lisa by picking her up early from work. I didn't know he would be in the car. I tried to call and warn them, but it was too late. The brakes failed with both of them inside. Michael is dead. This wasn't supposed to happen. I never wanted him to get hurt. I loved him. The entries that followed the crash showed Emma's desperate adaptation. Day 1 after the crash, Michael is dead. This wasn't supposed to happen, but Lisa survived, barely conscious. I pulled her from the wreckage before anyone could see. Everyone thinks she died too. This could work even better than my original plan. Day 7. Lisa is secure in the warehouse. I've told everyone I'm the survivor, the traumatized girlfriend. Helena Morrison believes every word. She's exactly the kind of lonely, grieving mother who will cling to any connection to her dead son. The later entries detailed months of systematically breaking Lisa down, using her as a living instruction manual for how to infiltrate our family. As I sat there in that chamber of horrors, the full scope of Emma's obsession became clear. This wasn't just about wanting Michael. It was about systematically destroying Lisa's entire existence and replacing it with herself. Every detail had been planned, every contingency considered, except for the one variable that had destroyed everything. Michael's unexpected decision to drive instead of letting Lisa take the wheel. I gathered the most damning evidence, the photographs, the journal, anything that would prove what had been done to Lisa, and prepared to leave. But as I stood to go, I heard the sound of a car engine outside. Emma was back. My heart pounding, I quickly hid behind a stack of old shipping containers, clutching the evidence against my chest. I heard her footsteps approaching, then the sound of the door being flung open. "I know you're in here, Helena," Emma's voice called out, and all pretense of sweetness was gone. "I saw your car parked down the street." "Did you really think you could outsmart me?" I pressed myself deeper into the shadows, trying to control my breathing. "You've seen everything now, haven't you?" Emma continued, moving deeper into the warehouse. My beautiful workspace, all my careful documentation, 6 months of turning that pathetic girl into the perfect instruction manual for stealing your family. I heard her moving around, checking the corners where Lisa had been held. "You know what the funny thing is, Helena? You were so desperate for a daughter that you made it easy. All those stories about your charity work, about how you help troubled young women find their way. It was like reading a blueprint for exactly how to manipulate you." Rage began to build inside me, stronger than my fear. "I studied you for months before I ever approached Michael and Lisa. I knew exactly what kind of wounded bird act would make you open your home to me. The grateful girlfriend, the traumatized survivor, the girl who just needed a mother's love." Emma's voice was getting closer. "But here's what you don't understand, Helena. I didn't just steal Lisa's identity. I stole your love. Every moment of affection you showed me, every time you called me daughter, every tear you shed over poor, lost Lisa, all of it was mine. I earned it. I deserved it more than she ever did." That's when I made my decision. I stepped out from behind the containers, the evidence still clutched in my hands. "You're right, Emma," I said, my voice steady and strong. "You did steal my love. But that was your mistake." Emma whirled around, her eyes wild. "Helena, I was wondering when you'd show yourself. You see, Emma, you studied me, but you didn't really understand me. Yes, I open my heart to people who need help, but I also protect my family with everything I have." I held up the photographs and journal. "And you just confessed to murdering my son." Emma's face went white. You can't prove anything with those. They could be faked, doctored. Maybe. But your voice won't be. I pulled my phone from my pocket, showing her the screen. I've been recording this entire conversation. Your confession about studying my family, about manipulating me, about turning Lisa into an instruction manual. All of it. You wouldn't. I already have. I hit a button on my phone. I just sent copies to David, to the police, and to 3 different news outlets. Even if you kill me right now, your own words will convict you. Emma lunged toward me, but I was ready. 6 months of grief had made me weak, but 6 months of loving the wrong person had made me angry. And angry mothers are dangerous. I grabbed a piece of metal pipe from the floor and swung it with all the force of my rage and pain. It connected with Emma's shoulder, sending her sprawling. "That's for Michael," I said. She tried to get up, and I hit her again. "That's for Lisa." Emma crawled toward the door, but I stepped in front of her. "And this," I said, raising the pipe one more time, "is for every moment you made me love you while you tortured an innocent girl." "Please," Emma gasped. "Helena, I really did care about you. That part was real." "No," I said firmly, "it wasn't. And I'm done being anyone's victim." The sound of sirens filled the air. The police were arriving in response to my messages. "You lose, Emma. You lose because you underestimated a mother's love for her children. All of her children, including the ones who aren't hers by blood." When the police arrived, they found Emma unconscious on the warehouse floor and me standing over her with the metal pipe still in my hands, completely calm. "Ma'am, are you all right?" the first officer asked. "I'm perfect," I said, handing him my phone with the recording. "Everything you need to convict her is right there. She confessed to murdering my son and kidnapping this woman's twin sister." As they handcuffed the barely conscious Emma, I looked down at her one final time. "You wanted to know what real maternal love looks like, Emma? It looks like this. A mother who will go to hell and back to protect her children. You should have left my family alone." At the hospital, David was waiting for me with a mixture of relief and concern on his face. "Mom, are you hurt?" "When I got your message about the warehouse, I'm fine," I said, though my hands were still shaking from the adrenaline. "How is she? How is the real Lisa?" "Weak, but she's awake. She's been asking for you." David's expression grew serious. "Mom, what she's been through, it's going to take a long time for her to heal." Lisa was sitting up in bed when we entered her room, her dark hair matted and her face gaunt from months of captivity. But her eyes were alive in a way that Emma's had never been. "Mrs. Morrison," she said, and her voice was hoarse but genuine. "Michael talked about you all the time. He loved you so much. I couldn't speak. The real Lisa, Michael's real girlfriend, the woman he'd truly loved, was finally free." "I'm so sorry," I managed to say. "I should have known. I should have realized." "How could you have known?" Lisa interrupted gently. "Emma studied me for months before she ever made her move. She knew things about my childhood that I'd forgotten myself. She was very good at becoming me." "Tell me what happened," I said, sitting down beside her bed. Lisa's voice was barely above a whisper, but her words were clear. "Emma and I were separated when we were 5. She went to a family in California. I stayed here on the East Coast. We found each other about a year ago through one of those reunion websites." She paused, gathering strength. "At first, I was so happy. I'd always wondered about my twin sister, always felt like something was missing. Emma seemed wonderful, loving, interested in my life, excited to get to know me. But something changed, gradually. She became obsessed with Michael. She'd ask me endless questions about him, about our relationship, about his family. I thought she was just being a good sister, wanting to know about the man I loved." Lisa's eyes filled with tears. Then she started showing up unexpectedly. At my apartment, at my work, even on dates with Michael. She said she just wanted to spend time with me, but I could see how she looked at him. I leaned closer, my heart breaking for this young woman who had suffered so much. Did Michael notice? Oh, yes, he was worried about her behavior, but he didn't want to upset me by saying anything negative about my sister. He was such a good man. Lisa's voice caught on the past tense. He tried to be welcoming, to include Emma in our conversations, but I could see the concern in his eyes. When did you realize Emma's feelings weren't sisterly? Lisa closed her eyes, remembering. About 2 months before the accident. I came home from work early one day and found Emma in my apartment, going through my things. She was holding one of Michael's sweaters, one he'd left behind after spending the night. She was smelling it, holding it against her face like a lover would. When she saw me, she made up some excuse about doing laundry, but I knew. The way she looked at me in that moment, there was such hatred there, as if I was the one intruding on her relationship with Michael. David had been quietly listening, but now he spoke up. Did you tell Michael about this? I tried. But how do you tell the man you love that your twin sister is obsessed with him? It sounds like something out of a soap opera. Lisa managed a bitter smile. Michael was concerned, but he thought Emma was just lonely, maybe a little too dependent on me since we'd recently reconnected. What happened the night of the accident? Lisa's voice broke. That evening, I was getting ready to drive home from work when Michael called. He said he was nearby and wanted to surprise me by picking me up. She took a shaky breath. When Michael arrived at my office, we discovered his car wouldn't start. Some problem with the engine. So we had no choice but to take my car home. I felt sick, understanding how Emma's plan had backfired so tragically. So, Michael drove your car instead of his own. Yes, Michael always insisted on driving when we were together. He said it was the gentlemanly thing to do. Lisa's voice grew heavy with grief. 2 blocks from the office, the brakes failed completely. Michael tried everything to stop the car, but there was nothing he could do. The crash. I remember the impact. I remember Michael screaming my name as he tried to grab the wheel, and I remember waking up in complete darkness, not knowing where I was. What happened after the crash? I was barely conscious, trapped in the wreckage. Emma must have been nearby because she appeared almost immediately. Lisa's voice grew bitter. She pulled me out first, and when I saw Michael, he was clearly dead. Lisa paused, gathering strength. Emma panicked. She kept saying, "This wasn't supposed to happen. This wasn't supposed to happen." I was so weak, so disoriented. The next thing I knew, she was dragging me to her car. What did she do then? She drove me straight to that warehouse. I was barely conscious during the drive. Lisa's voice trembled. When I woke up chained there, Emma told me her plan. She said she'd made an anonymous 911 call from a payphone miles away, reporting the accident. By the time help arrived, she was long gone. So no one knew she was ever there. That was the point. Emma said everyone would assume I died in the crash since my body was missing. Meanwhile, she had time to study me, learn everything about my life, my relationship with Michael. Lisa closed her eyes. 3 days later, she showed up at your house as the survivor, claiming she'd been in the hospital, too traumatized to contact anyone sooner. She let the world believe you died in the crash. My family held a funeral for me, believing I was dead, Lisa said quietly. Emma told me she watched from a distance as my parents buried an empty coffin. Meanwhile, I was chained in that warehouse 20 miles away. 3 days later, she appeared at your house claiming to be me, saying she'd survived when everyone thought I had died. The full horror of what Emma had done washed over me. My God, Lisa, I'm so sorry. The worst part, Lisa continued, was listening to her talk about how much she loved Michael, how she deserved him more than I did, how she was going to be the perfect girlfriend, the perfect daughter-in-law. She genuinely believed that if she could just become me completely enough, she could make Michael love her back. But Michael was already dead. She never accepted that. Even after the funeral, she would talk about him in the present tense. She was living in a fantasy where he was going to realize she was better for him than I ever was. Lisa wiped away tears with a trembling hand. Sometimes, when she was practicing being me, she would slip into these conversations with Michael, as if he was right there in the room with us. She would laugh at things he supposedly said, get angry when he didn't respond the way she wanted. It was terrifying. How did you survive 6 months of that? I held on to the hope that someone would find me, that Michael's family, your family, would somehow know that the woman living with you wasn't really me. Lisa's voice grew stronger, and I held on to the memories of Michael. Real memories, not the twisted fantasies Emma created. The way he laughed when I told bad jokes, how he always ordered coffee with too much sugar and pretended it was an accident. The way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. David reached over and squeezed Lisa's hand gently. He really loved you. I know, and that's what kept me sane. Emma could steal my appearance, my voice, my mannerisms, but she couldn't steal the love Michael and I shared. That was ours, and she could never truly understand it or replicate it. I found myself thinking about the woman who had lived in my house for 6 months, the careful performance of grief and gratitude. She was as convincing as you. She had a lot of practice, and she had me correct her when she got things wrong. Lisa's voice hardened. She would show me videos of her interactions with you, asking me to critique her performance. If I refused to help, she would hurt me. I should have known, I said, guilt washing over me. There must have been signs. Don't blame yourself, Helena. Emma studied me for months before she ever made her move. She knew things about my childhood that I'd forgotten myself. She was very good at becoming me. Lisa shifted in her hospital bed, wincing slightly from the movement. There's something else you need to know. Emma didn't just target our family randomly. She researched you specifically because of your kindness. What do you mean? She found old newspaper articles about the charity work you used to do, about how you opened your home to foster children after David and Michael grew up. She said you were the perfect mark because you had a natural instinct to help people who seemed vulnerable. The manipulation ran even deeper than I'd realized. She played on my maternal instincts. Emma told me that the hardest part of her performance wasn't learning my mannerisms or my voice. It was learning how to accept love without feeling guilty about it. She said she'd never had someone care for her the way you cared for her, even though she knew it was based on a lie. Did she ever express any remorse? Lisa considered the question carefully. In her own twisted way, I think she felt bad about deceiving you. But she felt worse about not being able to have Michael. In her mind, everything she did was justified by her love for him. David leaned back in his chair, processing everything we'd learned. What I don't understand is how she planned to maintain the deception long term. Eventually, someone would have figured out the truth. I asked her that once, Lisa said. She said she only needed to maintain it long enough to claim Michael's inheritance and start a new life somewhere else. She was planning to disappear, maybe fake her own death once she had enough money to start over. But she stayed for 6 months. I think she got attached. To you, Helena, to the idea of having a real family. She told me once that living with you was the first time she'd ever felt like she belonged somewhere. The tragedy of it all hit me then. Not just what Emma had done to Lisa and Michael and our family, but what she had done to herself. She had created an elaborate fantasy based on stolen love and manufactured connections. And somewhere along the way, she had started to believe in it herself. Helena, Lisa said softly, I want you to know that I don't blame you for caring about her. The woman you loved for 6 months, the grieving, grateful daughter-in-law who needed your help. That person had real emotions, even if the circumstances were fake. How can you be so forgiving? Because holding on to anger only gives Emma more power over my life. She took 6 months from me. She took Michael from both of us, but I won't let her take my ability to heal and move forward. How did you escape? I asked. Lisa managed a weak smile. 3 days ago, Emma got careless. She was so excited about some new detail she'd learned about your family that she forgot to properly secure the chains. I managed to get free and run. Why didn't you go straight to the police? I tried, but I was so weak, so disoriented. I collapsed a few blocks away. When I woke up, I was here. Lisa reached for my hand. Helena, I want you to know something. When David told me about the woman who'd been living with you, about how you'd loved her like a daughter, it didn't make me angry. It made me hopeful. Hopeful? Because it meant that the family Michael had told me so much about, the loving, generous family he wanted me to be part of, was real. Emma may have stolen my place for 6 months, but she couldn't steal the love that was waiting for me. No, then, as the evening wore on, we talked about practical matters, where Lisa would stay during her recovery, how to handle the media attention that would inevitably come, what to do about Emma's belongings in my house. But underneath the logistics, there was something else growing between us, the foundation of a real relationship. Helena, Lisa said as visiting hours were ending, I know this is awkward given everything that's happened, but I'd like to get to know you properly this time. The real you, not filtered through Emma's performance. I smiled through my tears. I'd like that too. I love the woman I thought you were, but I have a feeling I'm going to love the real you even more. It won't be easy, Lisa warned. I'm not the same person I was before all this happened. The trauma has changed me. We've all been changed by this, David said, but maybe we can help each other heal. The recording of Emma's confession in the warehouse became the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. Combined with the physical evidence I'd discovered and Lisa's testimony, it painted a picture of a woman so obsessed with stealing another person's life that she had committed multiple felonies to achieve her goal. During the trial, I took the witness stand with quiet confidence. Mrs. Morrison, the prosecutor said, can you tell the jury why you decided to follow the defendant that day? Because a mother knows, I said simply. She'd been living in my house for 6 months, and I'd grown to love her like a daughter. But when my son David called and told me about the woman in the hospital, I knew something was wrong. A mother's instinct is a powerful thing. And when you discovered the warehouse, I realized that my instincts had been trying to warn me for months. All those small inconsistencies, the moments when she seemed to be performing rather than simply being herself, my heart had been trying to tell me that this wasn't the woman my son had loved. Were you afraid when you confronted her? I looked directly at Emma, who was sitting at the defense table trying to look small and helpless. No, I was angry. She had stolen 6 months of grief from me, made me mourn for a woman who was actually being tortured in a basement. She had killed my son and made me comfort his murderer. I wasn't afraid, I was furious. And that's when you decided to record her confession? That's when I decided to get justice for Michael and for Lisa. Emma had manipulated me by playing on my desire to help wounded people. But she forgot that the same protective instinct that made me vulnerable to her act also made me dangerous when I discovered the truth. When Emma took the stand in her own defense, she tried to paint herself as a victim of mental illness, someone who had been driven to desperate acts by her obsessive love for Michael. I never meant for anyone to get hurt, she said, tears streaming down her face. I just wanted to be loved the way Lisa was loved. I wanted to belong to a family like the Morrisons. But when the prosecutor cross-examined her, playing the recording of her warehouse confession, Emma's mask slipped completely. You said in this recording that you earned Mrs. Morrison's love, the prosecutor noted. How does one earn love through deception and murder? Emma's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. The jury had heard her cold, calculating voice bragging about her manipulation, and no amount of tears could undo that impression. When the verdict was read, guilty on all counts, Emma turned to look at me one last time. I stared back at her without flinching, my expression calm and resolved. She had tried to break my family, but she had underestimated what a mother will do to protect the people she loves. In the end, her obsession with becoming part of our family had led to her own destruction. Justice wasn't just served. It was personally delivered by the woman she had tried to make her victim. Outside the courthouse, Lisa linked her arm through mine. Over the months since the trial began, we had grown close in a way that felt natural and unforced. She was nothing like the woman Emma had pretended to be. She was quieter, more thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that reminded me of Michael. "Do you really feel like justice was served?" Lisa asked as we walked to our car. "I feel like we fought back," I said. "Emma tried to destroy our family, tried to steal our love and our memories, but we didn't let her win. We found each other, we found the truth, and we made sure she could never hurt anyone else the way she hurt us. Michael would be proud of you, of both of us. He'd be proud of you for surviving, for being strong enough to testify, to see justice done. He'd be proud of you for loving so openly that you could be fooled by someone who needed love so desperately, but then being strong enough to fight back when you discovered the truth." As we drove home, because Lisa had moved in with me after her recovery, and the house finally felt like a home again, I thought about the strange path that had brought us together. Emma had tried to steal Lisa's life, but in the end, she had given us something precious, each other. After the trial, Lisa and I returned to the house that Emma had tried to claim as her own, but now it truly belonged to us. Not because we had inherited it or been given permission to stay, but because we had fought for it and won. "You saved my life," Lisa said as we sat in the kitchen where Emma had once performed her daily charade. "We saved each other," I corrected. "You survived 6 months of hell to give us the evidence we needed. I just made sure that evidence reached the right people." "When you hit Emma with that pipe," Lisa said with a small smile, "what was going through your mind? Honestly?" I was thinking about all the times she sat in this very kitchen, letting me comfort her over Michael's death, while she knew exactly what she had done to him. I was thinking about you, chained in that warehouse, while she was sleeping in the guest room and calling me Mom. I looked around the kitchen, remembering all the mornings Emma and I had shared tea here, all the conversations about Michael that had been nothing but lies. But mostly, I was thinking that no one gets to hurt my family and walk away from it. Emma thought she could manipulate a grieving mother, but she forgot that mothers are only vulnerable when their children are safe. When someone threatens our family, we become something else entirely. Lisa reached across the table and took my hand. "Michael would be so proud of you. He'd be proud of both of us. We got justice for him, and we got you free. Emma wanted to destroy our family, but instead, she helped us find each other." 1 year later, Lisa and I were in the garden together, planting new roses where Emma had once tended Robert's old ones. We decided to start fresh with new varieties, new colors, new life growing from soil that had held too many secrets. "Do you ever think about her?" Lisa asked, her hands deep in the rich earth. "Sometimes," I admitted. "I think about the woman I thought she was, and I wonder if any of that person was real." "I think it was," Lisa said. The capacity for love was there, even if it was twisted by obsession and mental illness. She just never learned how to love in a healthy way. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, the afternoon sun warm on our backs. David would be coming for dinner later, along with his girlfriend, Emily, who had become like another daughter to me over the past year. The healing process hadn't been easy for any of us. Lisa still had nightmares sometimes, waking up in a cold sweat, calling for Michael. Those first few weeks after the trial, she would check the locks on all the doors and windows multiple times before bed, unable to shake the fear that Emma might somehow return. But slowly, gradually, we had learned to trust again, to find joy in simple moments. Sunday morning breakfasts that lasted for hours, evening walks through the neighborhood, quiet conversations over tea that reminded us both of what genuine connection felt like. "I got a letter from the prison yesterday," Lisa said quietly, not looking up from the roses she was planting. I felt my stomach tighten. "From Emma?" "Yes. She wanted me to know that she's been attending therapy sessions, group counseling for people with obsessive disorders." Lisa's voice was carefully neutral. She said she's starting to understand how sick she was, how much damage she caused. "How do you feel about that?" Lisa sat back on her heels, considering. "Part of me is glad she's getting help. Another part of me doesn't trust it. Wonders if it's just another performance, another way to manipulate people into feeling sorry for her." "And what does your heart tell you?" "My heart tells me that it doesn't matter what Emma's motivations are. What matters is that we've built something real here, something she can never touch or destroy." Lisa looked at me with those clear, honest eyes that were so different from Emma's calculating gaze. She wrote that she dreams about Michael sometimes, that in her dreams, he forgives her. "Do you think he would?" "I think Michael would want her to find peace, just like he'd want us to find peace. But forgiveness, that's not something she can earn through therapy sessions or good behavior in prison. That's something that has to come from a genuine understanding of the harm she caused and a commitment to never causing that harm again." I thought about Emma, who had lived in my house, who had comforted me through my grief, who had seemed so grateful for every kindness I showed her. She asked me to visit her once, about 6 months ago. Lisa's hand stilled in the dirt. "Did you go?" "No, I wasn't ready, and I wasn't sure if seeing me would help her healing or feed into her delusions." I pulled a weed from between the rose bushes, feeling the satisfaction of removing something that didn't belong. But I wrote her a letter instead. "What did you say?" I told her that I remembered the good moments we shared and that those moments had meant something to me, even if they were built on lies. I told her that I hoped she would find real love someday, not the obsessive, possessive kind that had driven her to hurt so many people, but the kind that respects boundaries and accepts no for an answer. Lisa nodded slowly. "That was kind of you." I also told her that I would never visit her, never correspond with her again because my loyalty was to you and to Michael's memory, that while I forgave her for my own peace of mind, I would never forget what she had done to our family. What did she write back? She didn't. And I'm grateful for that. Some stories need clean endings. As the afternoon light began to fade, we finished planting the last of the roses and stepped back to admire our work. The garden looked different now, brighter, more hopeful, full of promise for the seasons to come. In the center, we had planted a white rose bush in Michael's memory, its blooms already beginning to open toward the sun. "Helena," Lisa said suddenly, "I want you to know something. These past 12 months living here with you, getting to know the real you, it's been healing in a way I never expected." "For me, too," I said. "You've helped me remember that family isn't just about blood relations. It's about the people who choose to love and support each other. Michael would have loved seeing us together, like this." "He did love it," I said, thinking about the recording we'd found on his phone during the investigation. In that last conversation with Emma, when she was trying to convince him to leave you for her, do you know what he said? Lisa shook her head. He said, "Lisa isn't just my girlfriend. She's going to be my wife, the mother of my children, the woman who grows old with me, and if you can't accept that, then you're not the sister she thought you were." Lisa's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. He was defending me. Even then. He was defending us, our future family, the life he wanted to build with you. As the sun set through the garden, I thought about the woman who had tried to steal our lives. Emma was now serving a life sentence, spending her days in a cell no bigger than the space where she had kept Lisa prisoner. It seemed fitting, but more importantly, Lisa and I were free. Free from Emma's lies, free from the shadow of her deception, and free to build something real together. Emma had wanted to be part of our family so desperately that she was willing to commit murder for it. In the end, the family she had tried to infiltrate became the instrument of her downfall, and that, I thought, was exactly the kind of justice Michael would have wanted. The house felt warm and welcoming as we prepared dinner together, filled with the sounds of laughter and conversation, and the simple, precious noise of people who loved each other sharing a meal. It was everything Emma had wanted, but had been too broken to achieve honestly. And in that warmth, in that genuine love, I found the truest justice of all, the knowledge that evil might wound us, but it cannot ultimately defeat us if we choose to keep loving, keep trusting, keep building something beautiful together. The truth about Emma would always be part of our story, but it didn't have to be the end of our story. Love, real love, is stronger than the people who try to counterfeit it. And that's something worth being grateful for. If you've made it this far in my story, I hope it's reminded you to trust your instincts when something feels wrong, but also to keep your heart open to the possibility of real connection. Love isn't always easy to recognize, but it's always worth the risk of believing in it. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, please share it with others who might need to hear it. And remember, in a world full of people pretending to be something they're not, being genuinely yourself is the most radical act of all.